Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you later. Oh, wait. Hold on. Intro. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So welcome to, what are we calling this? LP Live presents Building Disney's California Adventure 1.0. I kind of sent it off to our guy, and he decided to go with that title. I'm fine with it. I'm playing your host today. I'm Jeremiah. Over that way. Those are the co-founders of Laughing Place. That's Doobie and Rebekah. And down here is a face that we haven't seen, but hopefully we'll get around more. Yes. Hi, Alice. This is Josh Shipley, former Imagineer. Josh, why don't you read off your long title?
Former Imagineer.
Nice.
I mean, what else am I supposed to say, guys? I'm here as a theme park fanboy tonight. There's no titles going on.
Well, sorry. Hey, if we can get any clicks off of your former Imagineer title, we're not below doing that.
I hope you don't lose clicks and fans. That's me.
So we are here today to talk about the building of Disney's California Adventure, or as we know it, DCA 1.0. The four of us here, I was there on opening day and a couple of days prior during previews. I know Doobie and Rebekah were doing media. They were also at cast previews, and they were grand opening. Josh, what's your history with DCA?
That was still early on in my Imagineering years. I started at Walt Disney Imagineering in California in '96. And although I was originally working on Animal Kingdom, eventually California Adventure became a project that was greenlit along with Tokyo Disney Sea. And early in those years, I was still in the show production department. And part of what my contributions to show production were was I built what was referred to as digital show production. So for me, and especially since we're talking about California Adventure today, my contributions for that 1.0 you speak of were all on graphic production side. So that meant physically producing and many times installing graphic images all over the park. I mean, it's not totally, actually exactly like that. You wanting to talk about, opening of California Adventure, for me, I'm like, hey, I was installing graphics. I don't know if that's like totally interesting or not. That's why I'm here from the fanboy perspective. I'm like, let's just talk about theme parks, because talking about installing, vinyls on ride vehicles, I don't know. Is that interesting?
Surprisingly, it is for most of us.
No, I've never talked to someone who's installed vinyls on attraction before. This is actually a personal thrill of mine. Are you a guy
right
out there? I always pictured like you design it, but then you get someone much lower than you to actually apply it. Were you applying it yourself?
No, see, you just explained a hierarchy. There was somebody designing it. I was the low person installing it. That's what we're talking about here, friends.
Okay, hold on. Let's get in the Wayback Machine first, and let's talk about the pre-DCA days, going back to the very first expansion of Disneyland, the Port Disney out there in Long Beach, that would have included the Tokyo, or I'm sorry, not Tokyo. Sorry, Josh, I didn't mean to trigger that. The Disney Sea.
Yeah.
Which was, this was going to take up the spot, and it was announced in July of 1990, and then pretty much killed in December of 91. And this was going to be all around where the Queen Mary still is, and the Spruce Goose, of course.
Isn't that so amazing, though, to look at that? That is so beautiful.
I mean, I was researching this, and I hadn't looked into this in so long, and I can remember like seeing this. You know, we all grew up in California, or we grew up in California. Josh, you were a nerd and worked at Walt Disney World also, so you followed these plans. And, you know, the fact that they were going to have a monorail running from Disneyland all the way out to Long Beach at one point, so guests could just enjoy a nice trip that would be, 45 minutes if we were lucky. And then,
no traffic on a monorail.
No, but still, we also know how reliable monorails are at this point. And this one, a lot of these projects did end up transferring over to Tokyo Disney Sea, which I think we can all say is, if you've not been there, the dream park. And those of us who have been there, it is the dream park. It is a real, just from the second you step in to the second you leave, it is the best theme park I think I've ever been to. Josh, have you visited Tokyo Disney Sea?
I've not. Nope. I'd say I worked on a lot of that park, but I've never been there.
Oh, me either, Josh. We haven't been either. We're in the same boat, yeah.
Can I ask a question of the nerds above and below me? So I've heard a lot about Port Disney and the grand project this was, but how close did this actually come to being?
So this was mostly done because the Disney company had bought the Rather company, the owners of the Disneyland Hotel, and at that time, the owner of the Spruce Goose and the Dome and the Queen Mary Port. So the way it kind of sounds to me, and Josh, you may know more on if you heard any stories, it was kind of Disney was putting Anaheim against Long Beach to see who would put up more money to help build this park.
You know, I can't speak from an official capacity, because especially the years we're talking about is when, you know, I'm still a budding want to be Imagineer and cast member and all of that. But I just have to say, I agree with what you just expressed from what I understand. Mm-hmm. But that's just based on things at the time, and, you know, me trying to be observant about it all. That seems to be the kind of stuff I remember hearing about and reading as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it came down to, especially back then. I mean, this is way pre-internet. This was more where we'd just pass stories while we were in the queue for waiting for whatever ride at Disneyland. One of the things that I have around me all sorts of different pieces of memorabilia. This one right here, and let me just take it off. It really backs up the story of the Long Beach versus Anaheim, because Anaheim wins. And that was,
that's funny.
So they, you know, it was definitely pit against each other. And this project, sadly, you know, didn't make it into Long Beach, which I'm sure if it had, it wouldn't be as spectacular as the one in Tokyo turned out, because we all know Oriental Land Company will put money after money to build whatever they can get the best of.
Well, personal note for us, we're happy it didn't happen, because we got married on the Queen Mary in 97. and in part it was because the Queen Mary was kind of on our radar because of the Disney partnership and everything. And so that location we were more familiar with it, I think, than we otherwise might have been. We
may have gotten married on the Aquasphere if the project had gone forward.
You know.
So.
Well, the Queen Mary is still somewhere on this. I don't know exactly where it is. The Queen Mary was still going to be piece of this.
But it would have been a lot more expensive.
I was going to say, probably out of our budget.
So with the Port Disney project canceled in December of 91, they decided to go with the second version of an expansion for Disneyland. This one, of course, would take up what is now the spot of Disney's California Adventure, the Westcot. And this project, I mean, this one went so far. A personal story, I happened to be at the hotel when they were actually doing the announcement for Westcot. And I was out in the lobby area and had to use the facilities. And as I'm walking out of the facilities, the person who was walking right in front of me happened to be Michael Eisner. So that was one of those moments of, okay, I just used the facilities next to Michael Eisner.
All right, I have a quick story.
No,
I got to interview Paul Pressler once when he was the head of Parks and Resorts. I got to go to Team Disney in Glen Burbank to do it, whatever town that's in. And after the interview, I had to use the bathroom on the executive 6th floor, and right next to me was Michael Eisner.
See? Josh, do you have any potty stories?
I sure do, but I'm not sharing.
Jeremiah, we have something in common. We've both used the bathroom next to Michael Eisner. That's so awesome.
Rebekah?
I've lost control of the show.
Is that what he said?
Josh, really, I hope you understand that there is no rules here. Please feel free to so yeah, the Westcot project was supposed to take place in the parking lot. And this project, I have one of the pieces of paraphernalia that they passed out, had some great ideas, but overall, it would have turned out just like Epcot did when it first opened. It would have been everybody rushed to it, and then everybody goes, oh, okay, when's the Food and Wine Festival?
So bad. Jeremiah.
It's true.
It's true. The attractions there wasn't a, hey, I can't wait to go that. You know, the Spaceship Earth type version was about the Earth itself, and you know, their pyramids. This I always liken to the Luxor boat ride that they had in Vegas for the first few years, which was just kind of a history of the world. I mean, it wasn't too exciting. And I guess that's probably why this project only lasted till 95. I mean, they definitely got further than Port Disney because they had a lot more of the paper products passed out. But then once Westcot died, 1995.
Before you take this away, just a quick question. So where would this have been in relationship to Disneyland?
In the parking lot.
Okay. Yeah, same spot as California
right there
Adventure.
Is the Rivers of America. That's Jungle Cruise.
Gotcha.
Main Street. That would have been the Esplanade. There, surprisingly, is a very large amphitheater that kind of falls exactly where there may be the Hyperion.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so and back here you see there's the convention center. It was pretty much the same. The only real difference was the hotel over here was going to take over the Disneyland Hotel. Or actually, that was the Disneyland Hotel. This is more the parking lot.
Hey.
And it would have been kind of the Disneyland Paris, Disneyland Hotel type version.
And is it more or less the same theme as Epcot with the World Showcase? And
kind of. Like you can see back here, here's Egypt. It was definitely more of a historical type thing.
Yeah, more world cultural type of stuff.
Yeah, which I never really understood especially after Epcot, the first few years didn't go that well. So when we step into DCA 1.0 announcement in 95, which is shortly after Westcot died, and DCA, I think the announcements that they made to what we finally saw, there wasn't a lot of change. Josh, I will defer to you if you know any juicy details about the parks from the early planning days. I know you started in 96, so you may have saw more than I did.
Yeah, and I mean, I still remember the kickoff party that we had, and going over storyboards and the model that was being presented at the time. And what ended up happening was still pretty close to that. I mean, I'm going to be careful about my words because even though I'm no longer, a representative of the Walt Disney Company, who's to say that I wouldn't be again someday? And I'd like to be careful about some of my own personal opinions as opposed to anybody thinking that they're official. But that 1.0 obviously was on a streamlined budget, and that doesn't call for a lot of change orders. So, what was announced early on pushed through on that shoestring. The one thing that, only because I worked on it a little bit again in the graphic production stuff, was that I saw changes and alterations made to, on a significant level, was Superstar Limo, because of the incident with Princess Diana that was within that time frame. So there was a lot of emphasis that was taken off of the original paparazzi type of approach. Yeah. There may have been other things like that, but that one I was aware of because I had eyes on it because I was working on some aspects of it. Mm-hmm. So there may have been little things like that, but I really think for the most part, I mean, it was, here's the design, here's the approval. We're talking about the Pressler years, and it's push the go button and go out there and dig it up and make it happen.
Yeah, Jeremiah. No, just one of the things that I think often gets overlooked when we talk about the DCA 1.0 is just the amazing transformation that Anaheim itself went under. Mm-hmm. Just the transformation of just that whole area. Right. I mean, no longer when you would hit that lift hill on Big Thunder and you turn around, you didn't have all those screaming neon signs anymore. It was just like the entire area transformed, not simply the Disney theme park itself.
Correct. Very true.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things that, we saw. Instead of giant power poles in the parking lot, they completely rerouted those, dug it underneath, or wrapped it around in some cases. So
wrapped it around, yeah.
Yeah, California Adventure not only changed the Disneyland Resort, or changed it to the Disneyland Resort, it changed Anaheim as a whole. I mean, I can remember, like you were saying, those giant neon signs were so obnoxious, and then Anaheim regulated all the shops and hotels to have a certain height sign, and it had to have a certain design to it, which made it all very pleasing to the eye when you're driving around, as opposed to a giant Peter Pan sign for the hotel.
So I'm a humongous fan of DCA 1.0. I loved original DCA. To the extent that you can speak on this, if at all, what was the excitement level like inside of Imagineering working on this park, expanding the Disneyland Resort?
See, that's one of those tricky responses. Anybody out there that's watching this who was at Imagineering is like, yeah, what you gonna say, Shipley?
Okay, that's fair. Don't feel any pressure.
Well, but let me just at least give you some context as to why the hesitation. And I had mentioned it before. We were also producing Tokyo Disney Sea at the same time. And although a lot of people are dedicated to a project or an attraction or a show or a venue, for me, I was across the board with anything and everything that was coming through Imagineering. So unfortunately, there was a little bit of a competitive feeling that existed internally. And as you'd mentioned, Jeremiah, I mean, we know OLC likes to, throw everything at it. Well, that's not what was happening with DCA. And so as much as there was a lot of passion and heart going into, the creation of this theme park, especially something just down the street, as a sister park to Disneyland, it was hard not to draw some comparisons to the fact that OLC was giving a significant budget to an entirely different type of theme park going into Japan. So I would say some of the opinions were more about the comparisons that were going on internally. I even in hindsight, 20-year hindsight, looking at that, a lot of that was unfair. Because creatives are quite often emotional, and I would say a lot of those sentiments back then were frustrations based on look what they're getting as opposed to why can't we get this approved. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of rolling the sleeves up to do everything you could to make this place beautiful and wonderful, but internally it was hard not to look across the way and go, wow. How come they get to have that?
Right? Oh, that'd be tough. Yeah. That'd be really tough to have your creativity I don't want to say restrained, but in a way restrained. Like,
Right.
here's your parameters, and over here, you know, working at the desk beside you has, you know. Like,
and it took some time. It didn't quite take 20 years. I think there's been a lot of opinion changes, you know, since 20 years ago. But it took a while, you know, to start realizing that, hey, you know, we actually do have some, you know, beautiful things here. And what really helped was getting the guests in there to start informing that, hey, you know what, this is fun and this works, and it's time to put aside any, you know, petty comparisons from an internal standpoint, because, you know, there's a fan base that's growing from this, and I would say, you know, the park opening was a wonderful gift, because we started to hear the positives as opposed to any, you know, internal type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you just joining us, we are talking about DCA 1.0, the building. Kind of we're into it's built. Now we're just going to be nerding out about it for a little while. If you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, please feel free to leave those in the whatever comment section you are on. We'll do our best to answer. We do have Josh Shipley, former Imagineer and Uber theme park nerd, I would definitely say, with us. So he can't go too deep into things, but he can definitely share his personal opinions. And as we all were there for the opening day, I think we all have different feelings on what the opening day and even the preview days were to us. I know that I was lucky enough to attend one of the first cast previews, and I know Doobie and Rebekah were there also.
Just me.
Just Doobie. So what were your guys' favorite parts of the preview days and the early days of the parks?
So, I mean, I watched this thing go up as much as anyone possibly could who didn't actually work for Disney. I was taking pictures from the then Disneyland Pacific Hotel every single weekend, any angle I could get from the parking lot. I mean, we covered this thing like nobody's business in the early days of the internet.
Because we had just started.
We had started in '99. So it was just so exciting to watch it go up. And then stepping foot in there that first time, just, there's no greater excitement. I don't think I will ever feel that great an excitement at a theme park as stepping into DCA the first time after literally watching it be built for 2 years. I'm like, I didn't cry then. I feel like I'm going to cry right now, though. In my first opinion, I loved it. I just loved it. It was so different. There weren't any Disney characters there. Yay, this is something different. Disneyland was right across the Esplanade. I didn't have to make a choice. I could go to either one I wanted to anytime. So I was thrilled to have a completely different place to go. The place that sticks out in our mind that we completely loved was the Wine Country Market. Where else can you go inside a theme park, relax in this just awesome, beautiful
like
area?
A vineyard. It was
like a vineyard. We would go. We would get. I remember they had this dessert. I can't think what the word is right now, but this awesome dessert. Get some panna cotta. Thank you, and some pasta salad and some fancy soda because I don't drink.
And you were getting all of that, but you were getting all of that with what they like to call, I guess, you know, the Disney difference. You would get that with that Disney service.
Almost like a cruise line in a way, because the cruise line, my absolute favorite thing to do for Disney, has kind of the Disney-ness is fairly low, but you know it's Disney. You get the Disney level of service and all of that. Soarin' was the great memory. I love Soarin'. The original Steps in Time, the day one Steps in Time, I was a huge fan of. We stayed in the Grand Californian Hotel the night before, and Tony Baxter had done the Imagineer preview the day before, and we saw him in the concierge, and we're like, Tony, what did you like about the park? And he said, the Steps in Time show was amazing. And so I cannot wait to get in there, and on Tony's recommendation, I made sure I saw Steps in Time, and I love Steps in Time. And seeing Paradise Pier, you know, we could see it from way above, but standing there, and anyway, I could go on forever. I just love the park, but the best memory is probably Steps in Time, the Wine Country Market, and finally getting on Soarin' and having it not disappoint one little tiny bit.
But Doobie, that's exactly what I was just talking about. Is, you know, you're working on something, you've worked on it for a long time, you tend to forget some of that excitement because, you know, the pressure's on, the time frame, you're just working, and then it opens, and you know your opinion multiplied out is what needed to be heard. It was like, oh yeah, that's right. Remember when, you know, we didn't get buried by the production process and getting the opening date and, you know, going in, because that's all just stress, right? it's things like, what you just said, being able to, let people in and see what was going right and saying, oh, okay, this is okay.
And it was sad because, I mean, I'm sure you knew the internet back then. They were not too excited about this project. And people did not give it a chance. People that I talked to that went to the park enjoyed the park, but it was obvious plenty of people were not going to the park. And that really saddened me to see this park that it wasn't perfect, but it deserved better. And to go there and just see it empty day after day, and you keep going like, maybe this is finally the chance people are going to come and enjoy this park the way it should be enjoyed. And that day just never came. And it's kind of sad, frankly. But the people that went, that I talked to, they enjoyed it. I loved it. And, so be it.
Yeah. Josh, you poured your heart into this project for many years. And as you said, you were there putting vinyls on vehicles. What was your first experience after it, or opening or after it opened, when you actually got to watch the guests enjoy it?
I wish I could tell you I had that aha moment, but I don't, because it goes back to, think of, some of the wet Imagineer stories about the opening of Disneyland, and, the broadcast is going on and they're asleep, underneath the dark ride attractions because they've been, pushing so hard. I wasn't one of those people asleep under attractions somewhere, but it is that type of a push. And my memory is, I remember it opening, but I also remember like pushing really hard against deadlines. And there's always a list of things that you're trying to get accomplished even after that opening. And so for me, it didn't necessarily hit that date and all of a sudden, walk away. It was like, okay, we still have this, we still have this, we still have this. And so I don't have that exact time in my mind. Also, with a project like this, when you're there so constantly, when you're actually on site and you're doing installs, it's nice to get that opening, to know that people are going to come in and be able to attend and partake of the park. But we had already been in there, actively, putting it together for so long that by this point, the opening day was just okay, good. People get to come in and play now.
To kind of follow up on that, Josh, as an Imagineer, as somebody who ends up, you're working with these projects very, intimately and deeply and like, obsessively. How long does it take you before you can like kind of sit back? Because I envision like a filmmaker, sits and watches a film and thinks, oh, maybe I should have done that. You kind of you start critiquing, kind of second guessing yourself. Does there come a moment where you can kind of finally shut that off and stop?
Depends.
You would make different.
Depends on who you're talking to. I'm going to speak from a creative standpoint, and when I say creative, I mean all encompassing. From me, I'm a theater person, as an actor, director, producer, but then also the theme park side, the creative mind set. There's no finish. There's no, okay, we're done. I mean, there were, I think we can now officially say were things in New Tomorrowland that bothered me, nonstop. And I mean that from like an underneath the hood type of level. I mean, not the things that people would know about, but just sit there and go, oh, I just could have been this, or if I would have just had a few extra minutes. I think that's the normal creative process. I don't think you ever are satisfied and you're like thumbs up, and it's like, no, you are forced to open. I remember it was Dr. Pixar who had mentioned the fact that don't feel like they finished the movies. They feel like they have to open. You hit opening day, and it's like, if we had the permission, we would continue to refine this and perfect it, because you're always going to see the blemishes and you're always going to, see what you want to fix. But at some point, you're forced to actually walk away. If so, I don't know if that is necessarily a good answer or not, but I mean, that park opening was always that could have been, and it's not just that park. I'm talking about every attraction, everything that's ever been worked on. There's always the could have done that better, could have tweaked that. Wish I could go in and fix that still, that type of stuff.
So if you're at New Tomorrowland, let's say the park opens tomorrow and you're there with your friends, do they have to kind of go, hey, Josh, we're having fun here?
Well, yeah, with family, yes, they used to. Well, and I've kind of learned to try and curb that, because I don't want to take away from anybody else's fun. But it's the same thing, watching a movie or watching a stage play. There's always the, watching it with the director's eye of, why was that done that way? Why was the lighting done this way? Why was the music cue that way? And I, finally had my wife say, several years back, she goes, can't you just sit here and enjoy it? and I had to tell her, I said, actually, I really am enjoying it. It's just my mind is constantly having to work and process, and I'm thinking, because I'm relating it, and what would I have done, and it's just my way of enjoying it. So I've kind of learned to more often keep my mouth shut.
That's a generally good rule being a husband anyway, though, right?
yeah, very well. Yeah.
So the picture that I brought up was the orange stinger.
Yeah.
With the bee butts.
Yes.
Yes.
I actually stole this from Josh's
Yeah.
Facebook. So it's his picture with the bee butts, which I don't think lasted longer.
No, they didn't last very long.
Yeah, but we talk about Paradise Pier, and it was in Disney speak, it was the homage to the piers of yesteryear and the different attractions. But this attraction, I mean, it's morphed and changed into the new Mickey's swings, but it's still a fun attraction. And did you have anything to do with the bees wearing the goggles, or was that you just stuck them there?
No, that I mean, for me, I mean, that the reason that photo was grabbable for my stuff is because of those center bees right there, those graphic bees. I not only had to physically produce those, back at WDI, but then I did actually go in and install those, on that center podium. And in fact, I think somewhere in a tube somewhere, I probably still have some of the test bees, because knowing that even though it was protected, by that orange, it was still exterior, and much like any of the graphics that we were putting out there, they still need to be protected. So we did a lot of clear coat practice tests using automotive clear coat actually on top of those vinyls. And so, I mean, you look at that, and it's a silly little attraction, which is, yes, fun. But every time I would go, this goes back to another one of those. Every single time I'd go, I would look and I would say, okay, does the color look right? Are we getting any fade? Not that it was my job anymore to fix any of that. That falls under SQS and those kind of things. But for me, there was a lot of R&D that went into this as a process, that because we hadn't done anything like this in the parks before from a graphic standpoint. And so I was always doing quality checks whenever I was there, looking at them, making sure that, the magentas along the face of the bee were still holding up, and, dorky stuff like that.
It's the dorky stuff that we appreciate.
Oh, well, good.
Wow, that's cool.
But I mean, this is okay. So this is Disney. I'll be as blunt as I can, and many people think Disney's worst park, perhaps their worst attraction, one little sticky on a piece of the worst attraction, and to hear all the care that goes into that and all the thought, and you're talking about having to do tests in terms of protecting and stuff. People just don't have, including myself, any concept of even a bad Disney park, of the blood and sweat and tears that goes into it. And it's wonderful to hear that,
I'm glad to hear you say that, because even with, friends and family over the years, especially in the early years doing the digital show production, people would be like, hey, so what do you do? And I'm like, it's really hard to explain, it's a process you don't ever even think about, but I can point to it and say, I was part of it. Yeah, look, I helped do that. And they're like, oh, you did that? I'm like, no, I helped do that.
That's cool.
Yeah,
it is very cool. I love that.
Josh, at some point we'll have to just go over some of your other projects at a later time, because I know that I could spend hours just talking about Disneyland forever, but we won't talk about that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think Josh, you've seen Josh and I comment on Facebook every once in a while, and one of the things that I keep wishing for, and I'll keep wishing for it until the day I can't anymore, is that they'll have a QR code at an attraction where I can bring my phone and then I can see like a credit scroll.
Right.
For all the people involved in the attraction and just all the different, because when you watch a movie, you're aware of all of the people who come into it. But I don't think sometimes we are in the same way when it comes to tangible themed entertainment.
At best, we go, oh, that's Tony Baxter.
Yeah.
You know,
there's like 1-2 story people that we tend to know of.
I think we're probably not far off from that. I mean, I'm surprised that doesn't exist already. And maybe there's a park somewhere in the world that is, you know, embracing those kind of credits. But I think it's only a matter of time before something like that will exist. There's always been a little bit of internal frustration over the fact that it's like you've got these, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of people that are working on an attraction, and nobody ever knows it. And you're like, well, okay, well, I'm not really in it for the credit. But then you go to see a movie and you see your friends' names in the credits that just produced a Disney movie, and you're like, well, okay, I know that they were doing that for the last couple of years, but I just worked on that for the last 5 and nobody has any idea. And so there is a little bit of that, you know, like personal feelings. I think it's only a matter of time before there's a way, you know, that's going to express itself, and that'll be a good thing. And like you said, Doobie, I mean, we tend to go, well, and there's the person, like you said, with, you know, that's a Tony Baxter attraction, or, you know, that's a Joe Rohde thing. And that is true. I mean, you know, you have these people that are, you know, at the forefront of these projects, and yes, they do deserve to, you know, to be out there talking about it. But then, you know, behind them are just hundreds and, you know, sometimes thousands of people that really helped make that successful.
Plus, I want the list of DCA production babies. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, Josh,
that exists. Yeah,
we could put it on the baby store, the baby shop, and
I was gonna say my 2 youngest were born, you know, within the years of development of DCA. So maybe, you know,
they should be credits too.
Josh has always been. I don't want to say, you know, the secondary Imagineer to me, but we look at secondary below Tony Baxter. Secondary below Tony Baxter.
Can I tell you something? And I don't know if I've ever really said this in an open way, but I once had somebody at Imagineering volley an insult at me, and it was meant to sting. And the insult was, "He's just little Tony Baxter." and it was meant as an insult, and I went, "Wow, thanks."
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because going back to the D23 expos where you and Tony would do presentations, and those presentations, the history of Disneyland one, I want to say it was the 2nd or 3rd expo. That was probably my favorite thing the entire expo.
That's
and it was
cool.
just you and Tony having fun, because you guys are the Disney nerds just like that.
We love doing that stuff. I mean, obviously we haven't done that in a public format for several years now, but we genuinely do love like the opportunity to sit there and watch those, and I mean, those were structured. It was, you know, here's the time frame, and here's some of the things, and I'm going to volley this over to you, and you're going to take this one, but it was never, I mean, it was never rehearsed. You know, it was always like the I don't know if this was the same year. I insisted on putting in some America Sings stuff because I loved America Sings as a kid, and Tony's like, "Oh yeah, that one didn't quite resonate with me. So when we get there, you talk about it." I'm like, "My pleasure," because I mean, that gives me a few minutes to talk about something that influenced me as a kid. So
yeah, and you know, looking at DCA, I mean, we don't have. Looking at DCA 1.0, I should say, there isn't really the standout attraction other than Soarin' over California that if you talk to a guest, they're like, oh yeah, Soarin' over California on one side, and on the other side was, of course, Superstar
Limo. Come on.
And as it turns out, where did I put that? Oh,
it's there. I know you could grab it. Come on.
I'm looking.
Looking for a Superstar Limo.
Josh, there it is. Hang on. This is Josh has to tell this story of why this picture is in his file.
Oh. What are we
Pins
Come on.
and
Come on.
wiped
There,
from the-
there it goes.
There you go.
Yeah. What kind of story you want? I look at that and I see something very, very specific, and there's a reason why it's in my portfolio images.
Go for it. Like Superstar Limo, I think had so many iconic scenes and things.
Okay.
This is background of background, so I don't think I
Right.
could identify this until you
So-
post.
So here's the dorky, explanation behind why I have this image in my files. A lot of the production style stuff that I would do, it wasn't the same type of production process. Buzz Lightyear stuff, there were a lot of paint masks. So I can, say I worked on like every single one of those scenes. Did I paint them? No, actually. The paint team painted those, but they couldn't have painted any of that had I not made all of their vinyl paint masks for every single piece and image in there. A lot of things in Limo, because there's another image that is in my files of were like storefront things, like attraction vehicle stuff that you pulled up earlier. They would be vinyl print and clear coated and stuck down. This one, the reason this is in there is because this is a process that isn't really talked about. And again, it's for people that are scenic painters, they understand the process. But for friends and family that, again, say, hey, what did you do on this? And I try to explain it. They go, I don't even know what that means. Doesn't make sense to me. Don't care. This was a digital pounce pattern. So that's why this one's in there. And basically the file would come through. Sometimes if it was a vector image, Illustrator or freehand, that helped out my process a lot. There were other instances on a lot of projects where there was no vector work, and I would have to go in and have to actually create the vector point-to-point line work, for those of you that are graphics people and know. But what it means as a pounce pattern is I would then use the computer, send it through my machines, and using basically a punch needle on paper, it was following the graphic pattern that I had drawn out for the computer. Then the painters would take it to, whatever source that they were painting on, and they'd put those patterns up, and usually with a chalk, they would kind of lightly go over that paper, take the paper down. There is a very light outline of that entire image, and then they can go in and they can hand paint that entire thing. That's the reason why this image is in my portfolio of work, is because this reflects one of the few pounce patterns I was able to get an image of. I mean, that gets into the, are there people out there that want to talk about, graphic production type stuff? Maybe, I don't know. But I mean, this represents, a lot of hours of time. And you can see from the work light above, that's actually in the show production facility. I believe that's in the show production facility. I don't think that's a work light. It might be a work light. I don't know. But I mean, that's why that's in there.
So your best guess, Josh, from like idea to that billboard being in front of our face on an attraction, like how many hands are involved in that? Like just,
Wow.
Rough estimate.
Actual working hands, I would say, probably a dozen. People with a need to have meetings, probably a couple of hundred people.
Right.
Yeah, so that there, I mean, you can see, the graphics that are in the window straight ahead. I mean, those would have been, my vinyl prints. But I mean, looking at that, I mean, I probably created the stenciling on memories, memorabilia, and some of the other stuff on the right. I don't know.
And this is all 98, 99, 2000, like when the computers weren't,
right,
like they are now. That
right.
was
It was not a tool that was being used there. I actually helped introduce that.
Oh, wow. How hard is it, Josh, after putting years and years and years into this, to see it go away after just a few months of installation?
Depends on the body of work.
Most specifically.
Yeah, with Limo, I mean, honestly, I was never really emotionally attached to this one. This was a list of things that had to be done.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when it opened, I went through with my high 8 camera probably at the time and filmed the ride through, because in my mind it was, I can't see this being around forever. But I mean, to watch it go, it's one of those like, well, it's a bummer because, I worked on things in there, but I wasn't attached to it by any means. And the idea of Monsters Inc. coming in, I worked on that a lot too, was that was just exciting. It was like, okay, great. As far as we're all concerned, I think that Monsters is an upgrade, and that was exciting to see, go in instead.
Was there anything you specifically worked on at DCA where it was tough to see it go away?
Tower of Terror, but I was a major part of Guardians as well. So it was, saying goodbye to one thing, because the reason I say it that way is because I love the Twilight Zone. I will also tell you that when it comes to Tower of Terrors, Florida's is the one that just is like a home run.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of things within the original that opened at California Adventure that I was sad to see go, because I like Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. And but the thing is, I was such a major part of Guardians that I was excited about what was coming.
And Josh is a major comic nerd also, so I'm sure having to work with Marvel was just
it's horrible, I tell you. I hope you guys at Marvel saw the look on my face when I said that.
Oh yeah.
So, talking about opening day, opening few months, what was your favorite attraction, Josh?
Well, Soarin', that was an easy, go-to to say, I mean, for me, another one of my passions is, airplanes and flight and things like that. So Soarin' was pretty cool in that regard. I didn't know that I was going to like Screamin' as much as I did as a roller coaster. I love roller coasters. And for me, it was like just a roller coaster in a Disney park, but it wasn't. It's it's still a really fun roller coaster. Trying to think what else do we have? Mulholland Madness just beat me up.
The shows like Golden Dreams, Eureka, stuff like that.
I'd say worked a tad on Golden Dreams, but only saw it maybe 2 or 3 times because we'd hear that there were some new edits.
Yeah,
gotta go in and see if you noticed that there was some edits. I'm like, maybe.
I can remember those edits. Like, oh no, somebody's wearing tennis shoes, and then the construction of the train edit was.
Yeah. That was
edit throughout.
Yeah, that was a pretty big deal.
Yeah. My favorite thing of DCA, and still one of my favorite things as far as like in a Disney theme park in general, is the center courtyard area of the animation building. I
worked on that too.
When you first, oh, okay, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Not just me making dice. I had no idea. No, when you first walk, it's like you walk into an animated film. It's like being Dorothy stepping into Oz. It's so neat.
I have to agree. I mean, just as a theme park fan post opening, I did spend a lot of time in the courtyard. I mean, my kids were small, so it was a nice area to go in, and they could run around, and it was songs that they knew. But I really have always liked the feel in there, especially as it segues into different songs and things from these films that we love.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very hard now walking in there, because I mean, just like I think all of us spent so much time in there in the early days, and we'd know the loop, we'd know when this was going to hit, we know that. And then when they changed it a few years ago, and then the latest change where it's not so much all current films, it's more the classic, and then it goes from the pencil to the animated, where we think of Atlantis, where with that beautiful opening, and it's hard to walk into some of those, well, I guess just that attraction that's still there, and see the difference from day one to day whatever we're at.
I mean, this isn't for this conversation, obviously, but I do think we probably all, grow attached to things in that way. And it is hard when things get updated just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When the Married Life gets added to Main Street, it's like, it's a beautiful version of the song, but hey, that wasn't there before. That's not what's supposed to be playing right now. But it's better. It enhanced it. But the Esplanade, I mean, the original, that would play before California Adventure opened. I mean, I still have such a fondness for that because I took my tape recorder out there and I recorded it for a full hour so that I could listen to it at home. And
it's on YouTube.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we may have a CD of that somewhere, Josh.
I think there's a good chance that exists. But even several months ago, when we were out down there walking around downtown Disney, there were some changes in the track listings, and I'm with my wife and I'm like, oh, hey, that's been changed up, and you're struggling with, do I like it? Well, yeah, because it's an improvement. But at the same time, it's like, but I thought Star Wars was about to play right there. That's not Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like when they change the formula just a little bit on your favorite, snack food or whatever. Like Oreo slightly adjust the formula. Sometimes it works, and sometimes you're like, I don't know.
Does this taste bad to you?
Like when they added Iago to the Tiki Room, is that pretty much the same thing we're talking about?
No.
I worked on that too.
A little bit.
Again, things we're going to have to talk about.
I've actually got we'll talk about it some other time. I got a fun story about that.
So as we are getting towards the end of talking about DCA's 20th anniversary, I want to share probably one of the biggest jokes that we talk about here at Laughing Place that Josh had something to do with. And yes, Doobie is already excited about this.
I don't even know where you're going with this.
Wait for it.
Is he gonna go there?
I don't know what's gonna happen.
I think he's gonna go there. Oh, he did.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I love this thing. I really do.
The SS Rustworthy.
That is one of those attractions, and I say attractions much like they called Burger Invasion an attraction at one point.
Yeah.
But
also in the background of this photo.
Yeah.
But that is the photo I took. So
yes. It was just a simple play area, and when it first opened, I can remember it being much more interactive than it started being, like probably 2 or 3 months in, when the water effects started getting shut off because people were getting too wet. But that's one of the things. I mean, we make all the jokes about DCA 1.0 and how, Imagineer may or may not have said at one point that he liked the parking lot better than the park. But it had so many small touches and so many corners to explore and enjoy. The Rustworthy was definitely one of those times I would just like to sit outside and listen to the music. And then you think about Jumpin' Jellyfish with the background music that was done in bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I'm glad you mentioned the music, because there was an overall theme, especially the Paradise Pier and music that played. And I don't know that very many people know that there were variations, like the bubble version, that existed within all of those tracks.
I can remember Roberta from Disneyland. I think the last name was Rebekah, maybe. Telling me that and making sure when you go to Paradise Pier, you have to listen to each individual part.
We did. And at her request, her suggestion, we did. We made sure to note the different variations.
Again, that goes back to how many people are working on this and what level of details are in there that some of them are just accents. They're subliminal and you don't even notice. I mean, we talk about pavers, changing texture. But, the audio, having that kind of thing too, where you go, yeah, you may not have even noticed, but it took on an entirely different feel, even though it was the exact same melody of what you just walked through.
Yeah,
Josh.
it was very nice to just stroll through and hear the same song continue, much like they do now in Fantasyland with the carousel version. Where it
Yes.
plays different sections. But in DCA, yes, there's bad things, but I think overall that park changed a lot of things that we see now. It's kind of set up, and also it kind of also it it was acknowledged that DCA wasn't the best when they did the redo in 2010, but without the mistakes that were made or the positives that came out of 01, I don't know if the parks would be the same that we're looking at today.
Oh, definitely. There's definitely an evolution to theme parks based on, even things that you might consider to be a bump along the road.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and just so you know, Josh, Jeremiah is our resident. If not for this
that wasn't a setup for it.
Whenever we talk anything Disney, he makes sure that we understand the connection of things.
No, but I really do appreciate those kind of comparisons, because I tend to do that even with years. It's like, you realize when this was done, I was only this old, and now it's like putting like the historical pieces in play is interesting. So,
Josh, as a theme park nerd, would you have expected Jumpin' Jellyfish would still be in DCA 20 years later?
I have not taken my high 8 to record a ride on Jumpin' Jellyfish. So what does that say?
You knew it was.
Its longevity was destined.
So, Josh, I know that you were doing more of the graphics, but
yeah,
there are only 2 attractions that existed in Disney's California Adventure and Tokyo Disney Sea at opening, and it was Jumpin' Jellyfish. How did that happen?
Geniuses.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if it was true, but I love this tidbit.
Yeah, it was true.
That's awesome.
It had a 0 for most of the time.
So because we talked about some of the music really quick, one of my fun pre-opening memories was a good friend of mine that was a producer at Imagineering, that we worked on a lot of projects over the years with, Kevin Traxler, and we lost him some years back. But he and I were out there doing install on some stuff one day, and it was rainy. And in fact, the actual install were Nesquik signs. I know, kind of weird, in the kitchen spaces that would be viewable to guests. So we're over in the pier area. The park's empty because it's just install stuff. It's raining, but the effect the rain was having on the audio that was playing was the Paradise Pier music that we could hear the main carousel style playing, but it was coming through the rain, twisted and warbled. Just wow. the sound of it through the effects of the rain. And I stopped Kevin and I said, "Listen to that." I said, that's like Dark's Carnival coming into town.
Yeah.
So we both just sat there looking and listening, going, "Ooh, that's cool." We're the only ones to experience, that little thing. But it was so much fun, and then I always wanted to see, a dark, twisted carnival.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give a big shout out to Grizzly. What's it called?
I don't know.
River. Yeah, the Challenge Trail. I can't think of the name right there.
Oh yeah.
But
I worked on that.
Redwood Creek.
Thank you very much. It drives me crazy. I'm sorry. That is a great. I always forget it, but that is a great attraction. It's great for kids. I like climbing through there. It is easily the best play area I've ever seen Disney create, and I don't think it gets any credit for being. And it stood the test of time. It's still there. Mostly,
I like that area a lot.
I think it deserves some credit from DCA 1.0.
Yeah. Good call. Good call.
Yeah, I guess that Golden Zephyr and Jumpin' Jellyfish are really the only 3 things left from opening. I know Grizzly River Run, yes, but it's gone through the change of the theme, but Jumpin' Jellyfish is the only opening day attraction that hasn't changed almost at all.
I'm going to mention something, and unfortunately, it's going to make you angry because I can't go into details. But during the redo, how to improve, how to attract more people, thought process, the 2010-ish type of years. It was Tony Baxter, Bruce Gordon, David Cobb, who actually eventually went over to be an executive at Disney Channel. And we did a version, and that's what I can't go into details about, unfortunately. I don't know if anything's out there for me to say, you can find it online, because I don't know. But there is a version that we worked on, and we got so excited and so passionate about the what ifs. And it went pretty far in terms of the pitch process, and the one element I will say that's one of those like, oh, it hurts, is we actually were having conversations with Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys about having some level of involvement, just purely as an element, and I'm saying that from a very ethereal standpoint. And Brian's representative came back to us and said Brian doesn't feel like he has enough of a name on his own. So we went to the other partners of the Beach Boys, and everybody wants in. They want to be a part of this. That was right at the time that we also found out that what we were working on was going to get shelved, that we were going to stop working on it. And I usually would carry the pitch book for it in my desk. So anybody would come in my office, I'd be like, oh, this is what we were doing. The reason why I'm bringing it up is there were elements to it, because we were looking at turning business model on its ear. There were elements to that version. I'm not saying that that's definitely what should have been made. I'm just saying that this existed, right? There are elements to that version that I think would have kept California Adventure up and running most of 2020, just based on what the business model proposal was. So it was interesting to watch through the year and go, hey, you know what? How do we actually like carry through with some of these thought processes on and how to turn the business on its ear? It probably would have, outside of mandatory, stay-at-home periods. Right. I think it would have somehow existed. I'm not saying that's a reason to go back in time and have that version be done. It was just interesting to go, oh, it probably would have stayed.
That is the most frustrating story I've ever heard, John. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
It was a taste of Disney's California Adventure theme. That's all it was. It's just, you can walk in and see it, but you can't touch anything.
Turn the business model on its ear. Oh man, I want to know more. Oh wow, such is life.
Well, and I mean, the approach was, think about, you're presented with something that somebody says, hey, we're having some struggles here that maybe we need to rethink. And to sit down and go, okay, do I want to? That's not really, you have a job. We've been given task. What could you possibly do? And then to actually get enough momentum going in that room to get so excited about something that you're like, oh, we've got to do this. I'm now explaining to you almost every single project that you go through in a blue sky realm, because you get to a point where you're like, okay, if we don't do this, then I just don't know how I can even exist anymore. And then 90% of your blue sky projects actually don't go anywhere, or they evolve into something else. But you get to a point, and there was a point on DCA 2.0, I could say, where it was like, oh, this is going to be so awesome, and then you go, oh, it was just another one of the many brainstorming blue sky efforts that we went through.
Wow.
Okay, so we have to start wrapping this up. But Josh, before we go, your favorite project that you worked on for DCA throughout the years? You have to pick your favorite child right now.
No.
I don't like any of them.
Each one carried a different problem.
Wow.
This is funny.
For me, it is a little bit low-hanging fruit, but it is important. Was Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout?
Yeah.
I know it tends to be like most recent, because that was my last project that I saw through to opening before I left Imagineering. But it was Marvel, like you pointed out. I'm a comic book nerd. I'm a Comic-Con nerd. It's just so much fun, and I loved working with Rhodey on that one, because I actually took Joe to Comic-Con in San Diego, and that was like a super fun year. I was nervous at first. I'm like, oh no, what if Joe hates this? Then he's really not going to want me around. And we ended up having like such a fun time in San Diego. So there's a lot about that attraction that even, to this day, I just look at it and I go, yeah, it was just fun. There was fun stuff about it.
That's the definition of Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a fun attraction. Like
that was
we voted, the Laughing Place staff voted on the top 20 attractions, and I was very disappointed that Mission Breakout was lower than Tower of Terror. But people, I don't want to point any fingers.
Yeah.
How rated?
I can't write.
Yeah.
I'm just,
I get it.
It's not accessible to me. It's okay.
Yeah, Tower's better than Marvel, but
that's okay. I understand where you're coming from.
Your part of Galaxy is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Oh yeah.
That's our favorite.
Whatever it is.
That's our favorite.
Okay, and with that, guys, I think we're going to wrap up. I would like to thank Josh Shipley, former Imagineer, friend, Rebekah, Doobie. I'm Jeremiah. If you enjoyed this stream, please like, follow, subscribe, ring our bell, do all the fun stuff to get notified every 5 minutes when we go live. Hopefully, we'll be dragging Josh on to talk about many other projects, including
like the Great Movie Ride.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
We should.
I have said this.
Shut up, Jeremiah.
I'm trying.
I'm
trying, Jeremiah. I'm trying.
I don't know why Jeremiah didn't mention this, Josh, but we would love Great Movie Ride. We would love.
Let's talk about the Great Movie Ride.
All right, let's get that scheduled. We're going to get that.
Hang on, I'll send you the link right now. We're just going to start.
We're just going to do it.
Sounds good.
Good idea, Josh. If you want to do my job, we can work that out.
Sorry, Jeremiah.
Okay. Again, thank you guys very much. 20 years of Disney's California Adventure. Hopefully soon we can all walk in there without just having to buy a gift card to buy food. But until then, hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks.
Now we wait for Jeremiah to hit the button.
I know. Anytime,